So aside from drawing inspiration from their Pacific Northwest surroundings, what do Kat and Devon have in common? They also share an editor, Anne Sowards. I recently sat down with Anne and asked her about the editorial process, what she looks for in a new paranormal series, and what she thinks about the tweet life. Thanks for joining us on Project Paranormal today, Anne.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's just dive right in. I know that a lot of people think that all editors do every day is sit at their desk and read manuscripts, but I know that's not true. So why don't you tell us, other than reading manuscripts, what do editors do on a daily basis?
Well, today I spent a lot of time preparing for this interview, actually. but yeah, you know, we as editors, you know, obviously reading books is part of what we do, but it actually is not really the majority of what you do during the day at the office, because, you know, one of the things that I do is I am the primary point of contact both for people in-house and for people out-of-house. So I am fielding questions pretty much, you know, all day from various departments. You know, the publicist needs something, or the art director wants me to go over what clothes I wanted to put the character in, or, you know, sales will ask me, like, how many weeks was such and such book on the New York Times list. So just like all this kind of information, I'm getting these questions asked pretty much all day. Also, I am dealing with the same thing, but from authors and agents and people outside of house. So they may come and ask me, oh, when are you going to get back to me on my book? Or what was the print run for my title? Or can I get some more dailies? Or just like all these kinds of questions, just really fielding requests from both sides. I'm kind of, I guess, like the middleman, essentially.
The conductor.
You know? The conductor, yeah, in between. And then, you know, now that I guess, like the whole social media business, I actually spend a fair amount of time on Twitter as well.
Really? I mean, because we all know that a lot of authors have started using Twitter to get the word out about, you know, bookstore events and their new titles coming up. But how do you as an editor use Twitter?
Well, you know, it was funny. Before I started doing it, I really didn't quite understand, like, what the point of was Twitter. I'm like, well, why do people use Twitter anyway? But I decided I wanted to start doing it to kind of create sort of a public persona for myself. My goal was really to kind of create a community. I was hoping to, you know, start being able to have conversations with other people who like to read books, with the idea that, you know, hopefully people that came to me curious about me because of, you know, my work with some of my really well-known authors like Jim Butcher or Patricia Briggs, that people might start, you know, paying attention to what I was saying, and that perhaps they might consider looking into some of my other books because of that. It's like, well, if I like these books that Anne works on, maybe I'll like these other books that I work on. So that was like my whole idea when I started doing that.
When you're looking at something that's come into you from an agent, what are you looking for in a first draft? Because obviously it's not the finished product yet. Right.
Well, what I'm looking for when I get a submission is really, you know, very strong writing, of course, and then characters that I'm really interested in, a good voice, a story that I can't put down that I just want to keep reading. I'm a very commercial reader. Beautiful writing is nice, but if it doesn't also have a good story, it doesn't really hold my interest. So, I mean, ideally you have the beautiful writing plus the great story.
Now, what is it, do you think, about the Pacific Northwest that makes it such a great backdrop for urban fantasy?
Well, I've heard the joke is that it rains so much that the authors have nothing to do but write all day, but I don't know if that's really answering your question. It's a very good setting, you know, for a lot of reasons. You know, like in both Devon Monk and Kat Richardson, who are two of my authors that have their books set in these places. Actually, originally, Devon Monk's was not set in Portland. She had made an imaginary city. And I talked to her about that, kind of for reasons we were already discussing about, well, what if you set it in a real place? And she picked Portland. And I think that really helped it to make it more accessible and more grounded and kind of make Portland part of the book, part of the setting. And it just really made it work very well. Kat Richardson, on the other hand, has always set her books in Seattle, and Seattle is actually a very interesting city with lots of crazy, quirky things, and you know, maybe this is kind of part of the appeal of the Pacific Northwest for urban fantasy. I mean, where else do you find, like, they have this, like, giant cement troll under a bridge in Seattle, you know, and that's just public art out there.
Any other authors or books that you're really excited about right now, Anne?
Well, as long as we're talking about Pacific Northwest, I'm super excited about this young adult book I've got coming out in March that's called Falling Under. Which the author also lives in the Pacific Northwest. It's very emotional and full of angst and torment, and it's got, you know, a lot of the familiar things where you have a girl in high school who meets a mysterious boy, and who turns out to be paranormal. But what I really love about it, I think, is the voice. The main character is actually British and is living in the United States, and because her voice is British, you kind of get this sort of slightly Jane Eyre British boarding school feel to the book that I just really enjoyed.
Well, thanks so much for joining us
You're
today
welcome.
on Project Paranormal. It was great to talk to you, Anne.
Good to talk to you, too.